Everybody likes Lewis, yeah, and he kind of gets screwed over, but he's all right in the end. But yeah, I really do dig the way that this song is not bitter, just pining lover.
Well, I'll tell you, it really was not hard to relate with this character.
Welcome to a very special episode of 1001 Album Complaints, the show where normally each week we dive into the backstory of a classic album from the 1001 albums you must hear before you die list, break it down from a musician's point of view with lots of hot takes and humor amidst our educated musical opinions. But this episode is a little bit different. We like to say each week on the show that we have a great respect for anyone who tries to make a great record, and that we understand from experience how challenging it is to make something amazing. That disclaimer typically comes just before we make a bunch of snarky comments and nitpick the heck out of these titans of musical history. But today, we're flipping the script. We made a record of our own. It's called Stay Puft, released by The Chop.
Yes!
It's out on every conceivable digital platform and also on Slimer Green vinyl. Now, it is a Ghostbusters concept album. There are six complainer co-hosts in rotation here on the show. Six old friends who get together each week to talk about records. And each one of us played on Stay Puft. So we're here tonight to tell the story of Ghostbusters, the decades-spanning film franchise, and of how we made this tribute to the movie that we all love. Think of it both as an exploration of this pop culture phenomenon and a digital liner notes for our album. And we also ran a contest as part of promoting Stay Puft. The prize was to choose our next album and get an invite to come complain with us about it here on the show. All you had to do was buy a copy and support us in the process to be entered, and we've got a lot of names in a hat here. We'll be drawing them out tonight on the air to determine our winners. So, without further ado, let's play a clip of the opening track on Stay Puft. It is called Ready to Believe.
When you see something hazy and it's floating down your stairs, and your friends, they all think you're crazy, but every night you're scared, or you think that it can't be, but you wonder, is it really real? You're in luck, dial our number, we'll give you a great deal, 'cause we're ready to believe you. Yes, we're ready to believe you. When you're all alone, chill to the bone, 'cause you know that there's something hiding under your bed.
Now that you've got a taste, let's introduce our complainers for the evening. Now, spoiler alert, all six of us are here in the studio tonight, a real rarity, and we called on you, dear audience, to listen to Stay Puft and to write your own mean tweet-length reviews. And honestly, you guys did not disappoint. So instead of dishing
Quite
it out
true.
this week, we're simply going to stand back and take it.
I assume this is where you invited me onto the show to tell me I'm being replaced by a listener due to the caliber of their tweets.
I've compiled the best of your listener-submitted tweets into two segments, and I've handed them out to our complainers here to read out loud. So I will kick things off with an extra snarky, extra mean tweet. And first up, I'm reading from friend of the show and repeat guest Tony, who writes, "A writing prompt escapes the containment unit, but don't worry, there's no chance of this album possessing anyone."
Oh, Tony, come on.
It's pretty good, Tony.
Next up, we're going to throw it to Adam.
All right. So listener Tane writes in, "I ain't afraid of no ghosts,
but these boys are practically petrified of writing memorable tunes, and the only bustin' that would make me feel good would be busting this record into tiny pieces with a claw hammer.
Tane more like taint. I mean,
Well played.
And it's that kind of genius writing you can find on Stay Puft.
Making fun of people's artwork like this is really unkind. I have to say.
Lowest common denominator.
Indeed. And speaking of that, Alan, we're going to kick it next to you.
All right. Well, I've got a great tweet here from Brian, who is a recent first-time guest of the show and a consistent great tweet writer who wrote, Stay Puft tells a timeless story of brotherhood, specifically righteous brotherhood, and some Gib brotherhood. And I guess Oates was like a little brother to Hall, too.
Honestly, I'll take those. All sound pretty complimentary.
Not too shabby. Next up.
At least he didn't mention the Wahlberg brothers.
Next up, let's kick it to Marty.
okay, yeah, so we have listener Mike. He was a guest on the show earlier this year as a contest winner, and he wrote, "No s'more, please."
Short and sweet. Phil, you go next.
I got listener Jeffrey who writes in, this album belongs on the 1001 albums that make you want to die list. I didn't think anything could kill my love for Ghostbusters, but a bunch of guys dabbling in genres they routinely crap on might have done it.
All right.
Invoking death. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I imagine it was Jeffrey that I went to grade school with.
I think he wrote in, yes. I think he's settling a score there.
We need a last name here. Let's dox.
Must be. And Tom, you go next.
All right. We have longtime listener and noted curmudgeon, Aaron, writes,
Oh,
who you going to call? A decent bloody songwriter would be a start.
Oh, okay, bloody. I know who that is.
If only it was that easy, Aaron. If only it was like we know good songwriters.
And I have one more here. This is from listener Lara, who quotes one of my favorite scenes in the movie, simply saying, yes, have some.
Okay.
wait. Okay, now I'm not that obsessed. Tell me when that moment occurs.
You'll have to rewatch the movie as part of your homework for the holidays.
All right, fine. All right.
Okay, we're going to do another round of your listener submitted mean tweets a little later in the show, so stay tuned. But first, we love all of you, and we especially love all of you who supported us by buying a copy of the record. So let's do our first raffle drawing and see which of you lovely complainers is going to get to pick the album we cover next and get an invite on the show to complain alongside of us. I am sticking my hand in the hat now.
Get a drum roll.
I hope it's not Jeffrey.
And we have Logan.
Logan. All right.
All right.
Logan, I know he's a Patreon commenter. We'll be reaching out to you via email. We'll get your pick and we'll get this one on the schedule. Excited. We have a couple more drawings to go tonight, but Logan is our first winner. Thanks for the support, Logan.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
Looking forward to shitting on his favorite album. It's going to be great.
That's what we do here. Okay, with that kicked off, let's pivot right into some backstory here, talking about the origin of the concept, and then we'll run through the album chronologically and discuss some of the writing, recording, and performance details. So the stuff that we so often wonder about when it comes to other albums. But to get into the backstory, the origin of Stay Puft traces all the way back to a farmhouse in Ontario, Canada, in the late 19th century. I'm talking, of course, about Dan Aykroyd's great-grandfather, a renowned spiritualist.
Damn.
And the Aykroyd family lineage of seances and communing with the dead generally.
I seriously thought you were going to talk about a trip to Canada I forgot we took.
I thought you were going there too. I was like, did you guys go to Canada?
Laying the groundwork for the CBC to play our record, Phil.
Ooh, there you go. Force
They
them.
pay you for that up there.
No, I'm being serious. So Dan Aykroyd's grandfather was a telephone engineer who tried to use radio waves to talk to the other side. And his dad published a book about the history of ghosts. And finally, Dan Aykroyd himself decided to continue the legacy by creating the idea for Ghostbusters.
And Skull Vodka, which is probably his finest creation.
His finest creation. Now, a little bit of context. Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, the eventual stars of the movie, got rocketed to superstardom after Saturday Night Live became an instant hit in the late 1970s, and alums of that show started making successful comedy films like Animal House, Caddyshack, and Stripes. That said, Ghostbusters was a significantly different animal. It called for a bigger budget, tons of special effects, more challenging on pretty much every level. The idea for Ghostbusters starts with Dan Aykroyd reading an article about parapsychology, about trapping ghosts. Now, his initial instinct is to make something like a 1930s ghost movie with a comedy duo, kind of like Abbott and Costello. And his comedy partner at the time was, of course, John Belushi, since they just had a hit with the Blues Brothers. Unfortunately, the first setback is that John Belushi dies of a drug overdose in 1982.
Excuses.
Yeah, seriously, just commune with him on the other side, man. Come on.
Good point. That should not have stopped them. No, clearly this was devastating to Dan Aykroyd. They were like brothers. So despite not being in the film, John Belushi does get commemorated nonetheless. Does anyone know how?
Oh, yeah, because Slimer kind of looks like Belushi.
Slimer was inspired by Belushi.
Are you kidding me?
Did not know that.
Dude, I thought you were joking, Phil. That's crazy. And now that you say it, my mind is blown. Oh my God. That's crazy.
So Aykroyd turns to his other SNL bud, Bill Murray, the Murricane. That's apparently his nickname. I hadn't heard that before. He supposedly said yes to a half-finished script, but he's also notorious. Bill Murray is notorious for not really committing until the last possible minute to anything. Dan is quoted as saying that when you put a script in Billy Murray's hands, you have to be a process server. You have to look him in the eye like, you did receive this.
He's like the Phil of that production.
Yeah, the Murricane. That'd be a good, yeah.
I mean, I think you guys could workshop that a little, you know.
We'll workshop it. Yeah, sounds about right. So then Dan Aykroyd asks Ivan Reitman, a director who had done Meatballs and Animal House, to help him develop and eventually direct the movie. Now, at the time, the script was completely nuts. It was happening in the future. It was taking place on several different planets. Craziness, right?
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Reitman pitches back to him that it should be more grounded here on Earth, one, for budget reasons. And he introduces the idea of the Ghostbusters going into business. It was the 80s. Everyone was going into business. It was a topic du jour. Now, to be fair, Dan Aykroyd's original version had lots of ideas that stuck, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man himself and the iconic Ghostbusters logo. Reitman also makes one other key suggestion, though. He says, let's bring in Harold Ramis, SCTV alum, friend to Bill Murray, and a guy who's been successfully writing and directing comedy scripts for a handful of years now. And I don't think I realized that Harold Ramis, not only co-wrote a lot of stuff, but he also directed Caddyshack and the original National Lampoon's movie. So, and he would eventually direct Groundhog's Day.
Really?
I did know he did Groundhog's Day, but I definitely didn't know that he had done all that stuff. Definitely not.
Wow.
So Harold agrees right away. The studio also greenlights it based on a pretty loose concept. But they do think of it as a huge risk for two reasons. One, like I said before, the budget is huge. Like, we're talking $25 million, about 3 times what they would have made Stripes for. And this is a comedy film, so this is unprecedented at the time. And 2 is experience level. They're handing that money to a writer and director who have no experience with such a large budget or a movie so reliant on effects. So, first order of business, now that they got the money and the green light, they have to write the final draft. And at this moment, they have 3 characters who are relatively undifferentiated from each other in Spengler, Venkman, and Stantz. So what did they do to solve that problem? They steal. They quickly decide to borrow the character outlines from The Wizard of Oz, the Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man.
Wow. I definitely did not know that.
Whoa. Dude.
No, it never occurred to me.
Pretty smart idea, actually. Those are good
Yeah.
character archetypes that fill out a trio.
Definitely.
So Ramis helps punch up the script quite a bit. He shares official writing credit with Dan Aykroyd. And I should point out, too, that in addition to this, he was building this great comedy writing career, but he also had experience writing for Bill Murray's voice specifically. He had written for him on Caddyshack, on Meatballs, on Stripes. He was good at it. He understood Bill Murray's thing. Now, in other interesting casting news, or casting could have been, they originally had written Louis Tully specifically for John Candy. But Candy was hesitant, and he actually pitched the character doing a German accent and flanked by two big dogs at all times.
Very different direction.
The production just said, no, we're not doing that. And then they called up Rick Moranis, who eventually got the part.
Oh, what could have been. That's just so funny to hear these like little, they talk about the multiverse, right? All these little avenues that could have been taken that ultimately didn't. And thank God they didn't take them because we have what we have.
I can't see Candy in that role. I'm sure he would have crushed it, but in retrospect, Moranis seems like he was perfect for it.
It sounds like it would have been a very, very different interpretation. But speaking of different interpretations, there's one more would-be casting that I suppose is commonly known, but we have to talk about it, which is Eddie Murphy. It has long been rumored that he was offered a major role in the movie, but turned it down in favor of doing the movie Beverly Hills Cop. Now, the details are a little murky. Ivan Reitman, in interviews, denies Murphy was ever even considered for a role, let alone offered one. But Eddie himself says it's a major regret of his not doing it. So my best guess is that he was in some kind of informal contention to do something, whether it was for the role that would become Winston, or whether it was the role that would become Bill Murray's role, Venkman, pre-Bill Murray. It's not super clear, right? The script went through lots of changes, but...
So would Winston be like Dorothy? Or like,
I know. I was trying to think, who is who? Who would you guys say is the Tin Man and the Lion? And
I think Egon is the Tin Man.
okay, yep, I could see that.
Bill Murray has to be the Scarecrow.
Bill Murray's the Scarecrow. Aykroyd's the Lion. Ernie Hudson is clearly, Toto?
Ernie Hudson's the warden from Oz.
oh, damn.
Ernie Hudson is jacked still at like age 70.
Oh, yeah. He's
And we do have video of him yelling at Tom about this project, I believe.
No, he's yelling at me.
He's yelling at Phil. I paid for it. He's not yelling at me.
And he butchered Tom's name, I think, right?
The
Yeah.
butcher's Tom's name. Well, I was going to say, I think the importance of Winston the character is that he's an outsider. And so you get this storytelling device of explaining and having an everyman as your stand-in for the audience who's not inculcated in the Ghostbusters deal.
Yeah.
But anyway, the script went through lots of changes. It's not clear where Eddie Murphy would have fit in. He certainly wouldn't have just slotted into the existing Winston role. We know what we know about him as an actor and a comedian. He would have been more like the Bill Murray role, but who knows, right? All right, I have a couple last pieces about the movie, and then we'll get into our album. So setting the movie in New York City was also considered a risky choice at the time. New York's reputation at this time was in shambles. It was coming off of a decade of violence and financial catastrophe, but ultimately it becomes a big part of the movie itself, and some credit this and SNL more generally with helping revive New York's image overall in the American consciousness in the decades to come. A couple other little tidbits I found in my research. So they also hit a snag late into the filming where they realized the Ghostbusters was also the name of a cartoon from the 1970s.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah.
And they briefly considered changing the name, and the other names that were bandied about were Ghost Stoppers or Ghost Breakers, which would have been
No,
terrible.
they both suck. Yeah.
But they ultimately cleared the name, right? Now, as we know, the movie comes out in 1984. It grosses something like $250 million worldwide. It's considered the second biggest movie of that year after Beverly Hills Cop, which Eddie Murphy went and started.
Well done.
The theme song also hits number one. It spawns a movie sequel. It spawns toys, cartoons, a franchise property that continues shakily to this day. Now,
Also spawns a lawsuit, right?
Oh, the Huey Lewis?
The theme song, yeah, for Huey Lewis. It's "I Want a New Drug," and he got sued for that.
Yeah,
Ray
he
Parker
definitely
Jr.
got
sued
sued.
for that. Yeah,
do we know how that ended up?
the case was settled out of court under a confidentiality agreement. What happened was Ray Parker Jr. had to settle with Huey Lewis, had to pay him some money, but put a confidentiality agreement in it. And then apparently later in like 2001 on Behind the Music, he talked about, Huey Lewis ended up talking about the settlement. So Ray Parker Jr. then sued him for breaking the confidentiality agreement. And I
Nice.
think he had to settle out of court with him.
Awesome. Okay, so here is where we come in. Way back in 2015, one of us, I think it was Phil, proposed the writing prompt of a Ghostbusters musical experience. As old friends, we were at this point spread across the country geographically. We were looking for excuses to get together and make music together. And we also decided on a genre early as well, initially titling our project folders the Ghostbusters Soul Review. Maybe you get what I'm getting at here.
That's pretty good.
It's a terrible, terrible title. We're terrible. I'm glad we changed the name.
But, Soul Ghosts, it was good.
That's a good
Yeah,
dad
yeah, it was
joke,
good, yeah.
right? Yeah, like
By the way, for this, I don't have a quote from it, but I did look up our initial email exchange with all 6 of us from 2015, and it is unhinged, guys. I'm surprised we got anything done based on this email chain.
Well, that's probably why we had such a tight, compact recording time and got it out there real quick.
Decade.
2015. What was going on in my life in 2015? Seems like so long ago.
It was, dude. I don't remember 2015. Yeah.
But what did come out of that initial email string, and Tom, I will give you credit for putting this at least into the chain. Maybe it had been a part of conversations before, I'm not sure, was the overarching theme of science versus the supernatural, and how in the world of Ghostbusters, both of these things exist. But ultimately, the story is about science triumphing over religion and the supernatural, which is a really interesting theme.
Yeah.
By the way, that email thread had 65 replies, and I'm gonna get a word count for Phil's contribution momentarily.
There was at least one moment where Tom just jumped in and said, "Phil, I don't know what the fuck you are talking about right now." And then Marty just added his email, just said +1.
You guys don't know how to properly harness excitement. You don't know how to let the firecracker explode.
Bunch of wet blankets, man.
Actually, my Gmail's literally crashing trying to pull this thread up.
Good.
I swear to God.
Good.
So going a step deeper on the themes, because I do think this is interesting to talk about, the Ghostbusters, as scientists, are literally facing off against gods. So there is this science versus religion overtone, but it's worth noting a couple more aspects that give it, I think, a little more depth. And I'm coming from the place of someone who has studied the film in order to make a concept record, so forgive me. But when faced with the daunting task of unraveling the supernatural mysteries and saving New York, the Ghostbusters initially turn to ancient, unverified religious texts, more or less, a la Tobin's Spirit Guide, to prove themselves knowledgeable.
Ancient aliens.
Right. And then also, though they use science to contain the ghosts at the firehouse with the containment unit, that method is proven flawed, as all the ghosts are eventually released and wreak havoc on the city. Lastly, in the end, when our heroes are at their lowest, they propose a scientific remedy to win, aka crossing the streams, even while they admit they do not know if it will work or not. Thus, it is ultimately a leap of faith.
A type of faith. Whoa. Damn, this is heavy, guys. I didn't appreciate just how heavy this was until right now.
I mean, they're kind of combining the streams, right? I mean, crossing the streams is like a piss reference.
Yes, right. But they do unify to a single stream, which does not happen when you're pissing.
Right, it does not. Yeah.
From what I recall, from all my times pissing with 4 guys.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Look, I'm not necessarily saying that all these ideas were purposely put into the film, but I do think these gray areas and some of the underpinning or implied philosophy have helped it resonate in the way that it has with kids and adults, and certainly it was on our minds as songwriters, and it made it fun to play around with some of these themes in the songwriting. I think we can all agree. Now, from Tom and my perspective, it was only the previous year, 2014, that we had made the first Beverly Crushers recordings by A, giving each other a writing prompt, a silly one at that, and B, assembling a band with minimal practice time, and then C, locking ourselves in a recording studio for 4 days to see what came out. And we really, really liked what we got. So we wanted to try that again. 2 factors seem important here. The constraint of time, as in we have to finish it here, which clearly didn't work out through the rest of the record, but more on that later.
We must.
And the relative lack of practice. I'm telling for the audience who might be curious, because the relative lack of practice means the songs still have a lot of life left in them. There's a lot of flexibility, and there's something really cool about songs that haven't been beaten to death either live or at practice. So anyway, that's what we did. We booked Louder Studios, which is Tim Green's place up in Grass Valley. Marty and Phil drove down from Oregon. Tom and I drove up from San Francisco. Alan flew in, I believe, from Delaware. Adam passed. He didn't like us as much back then.
I hated you guys.
I think Adam knew what he was signing on for, and he was like, I am like an amateur level drinker at best. You guys are taking
Yes,
it pro,
that's
and I don't know
probably
if
what
I
kept
can
me
hang
away.
with you."
And so in 4 days, we did 5 songs, 4 of which appear here almost completely as they were made that weekend. Now, beforehand, we passed around phone speaker demo recordings, and during that run-up, we'd also compiled a folder with lots of snippets of other ideas, many of which remained uncompleted. And the 5 songs we tried were just the ones that felt the most done. when we saw each other. Those songs were, by the way, Ready to Believe, The Tools, The Talent, Janine, and The Traveler. Marty is the drummer on all those songs. Phil plays keys on all those songs in addition to all the lead guitar. Alan and Tom traded off bass duties on those songs. I believe, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tom's playing on Janine and Ready to Believe, and Alan's playing on The Traveler and Tools and Talent. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And Tom and Phil and I all sing. We trade off lead vocals on Ready to Believe, and we sing a bunch of the background harmonies. So this feels like a good time to start revisiting the songs. And my goal here is to go through a couple of the songs on the record, talk about them, offer our notes, but I'm going to handle them in the chronological order in which they were recorded as we go through this focus list. So there'll be a few more story points as we go. So let's go back first and play another clip of Ready to Believe, the opener on Stay Puft.
Ready to believe you. When your home is a nest of ethereal pests, well, who you gonna call when you're scared of the dead? For a nominal price, lock up your poltergeist in a custom non-exploding containment grid.
So I think this was the first song that I wrote for this album. And after having gotten the writing prompt, it was like, all right, well, like, let's watch the movie and see where we can get some inspiration. And very early on, they have that commercial, "We're ready to believe you." And it's like so very clunkily delivered, but honestly, it's hilarious. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie, honestly, is like them doing that commercial.
It's a bad locally produced commercial, right? From the 80s.
Yeah. Not to get like too highfalutin about it, but I also thought that it was sort of like a little bit of a subtle nod to the audience of like, you have to suspend some disbelief for this. You know, you have to get ready to believe in this story as we sort of go ahead and tell this very fantastic tale. But the concept, again, of like the Ghostbusters being a business was very starkly laid out in that commercial, and I thought that that was a really good idea for a song, like just talking about the business of being a Ghostbuster. Now, I had originally written this song as a slow soul song, and all the demos were probably about 30% slower and, you know, much more kind of plotting. And again, I think it was one of those things where I was just like, well, I'll just get in and sing like Otis Redding and then it'll all work out. And it's like, well, it doesn't really work like that.
Which is normally a good approach.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, just
pretty bulletproof.
Exactly. But I honestly, like, when we got to the space, I think that we had never played it, and I had personally never played it in this iteration before we actually got into the recording space. And I was just like, let's just speed it up a little bit, and kind of played that bass line a little faster, and was like, just kind of something like that. And then I think we banged it out in maybe 2 takes. Like, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, that's my memory from a lot of this stuff. I don't think I should admit this, but I don't think I listened to any of these songs before.
We knew, Marty. It's
so
okay.
you're a drummer? Before sitting down to record drums for them.
I think this is the kind of thing that the audience might be curious about of the process, right? So that is actually interesting to me, Marty, and not surprising for the record, that even though we passed around these demos, the demos themselves are very much skeletons, right? In this case, like Tom said, he had chords, he had lyrics, he had melody. But things like the tempo, the feel, they're completely up for grabs. And Marty and others, I'm sure, are coming in and just going like, yes, let's try it in the room. And we can get through it pretty quick. And that tempo adjustment really unlocked the song. I remember us saying that in the moment. Like, I think we must have tried it at a slower tempo first. And then when we sped it up, we're like, oh, no, this is it right away.
Well, I didn't recognize the song because I was elsewhere in the house, probably with a bowl in hand. And then I walked in and heard this version of it sort of working through. And I was like, I didn't remember hearing this on the demo. It sounded sort of foreign, but it sounded awesome. And that was what stuck with the record. So I think it was definitely a great choice.
I think you made that up, Alan. I don't think you remember that at all. I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
I believe the bowl part. Yeah.
A couple other notes. So listen, we're talking about this early demo, and throughout this episode, I did dig up some early demos that I want to play for you, which I think the audience might find interesting about how things came around. Unfortunately, I don't have a demo. The demo we're talking about here, that has been lost to history. But the other thing that jumps out to me, and a decision we made early on, is that all three of the main singers, Tom, Phil, and myself, Rob, are singing lead. I'm not sure who suggested that. Maybe you guys know. But this also is what makes the song for me. It brings the concept together.
I feel like that was a Tom suggestion. Yeah, I feel like Tom really pushed for
I think it grounds it. It gives it a lot more implied storyline right away than it otherwise would have had.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, Tom could have only gotten so many cigarettes in if he had to be in the booth singing the entire time. So
I don't know what you're talking about, Alan. I think you mean prayer sessions. No, in the original notes that I wrote out for this, it's like color coded with who's going to sing which lines. Because I definitely wanted it to feel like that commercial. Because in the commercial, they're sort of doing almost like the Soul style, where like they're all standing in a row and one guy steps forward and then says something and then steps back and the other guy steps out. It's like I wanted that kind of feel.
Yeah, right. To deliver his line. Yeah.
I was thinking like Chili's baby back ribs, you know? Everyone just like standing around sharing a microphone, you know?
So my point is that a decision like that made really early on and relatively quickly and locked in relatively quickly ends up gluing a lot of the other pieces together over the next recording session, over this recording session, over the next recording session. We ended up using that vocal trade-off approach quite a bit, and that's one of the things that makes the songs hang together a little bit in your mind. I also wanted to say that I think Phil's guitar solo here is great. It is perfectly chill. It's perfectly minimalist. Really great job on that, Phil. Bang that out.
Yeah.
I think you can also imagine, if you like, Tom and I standing at the mic together trying to bang out these oohs and ahs in the background part. And it's not that the notes themselves are so hard, but the challenge is holding a note super consistently throughout the part. And at one point, I remember the engineer, Tim Green, great talent, amazing dude. He gave us a visual tuner to hold up in front of our eyes to see in real time if we were wavering from the correct pitch.
Yeah, I remember this. I thought it was a smart move. Yeah.
Dude, that's great.
The white plastic Boss tuner. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's funny because I remember talking to Tim. We were struggling with those backgrounds. They were tough, just in terms of long holds. And I remember talking to him and being like, well, you know, maybe we'll just do something else. And he was like, no, like, you can do it. I know you can do it. It's just going to be really fucking hard. And I was like, oh, it's actually nice to have somebody sort of believe in you. But I feel like most engineers would be like, yeah, let's just stop this right now. I don't want to deal with this bullshit anymore.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
And guys, special treat if you're interested. If you love us so much and you want to see what we looked like when we were skinnier and had more hair, we have a making of Studio Diary video that is being unearthed for the first time. It is available right now on our YouTube channel for you to check out.
Nice.
You know, I'll say one more thing about this song that I like that hasn't been brought up is that it almost has like the least things possible to add to a song to make it complete, which is what I really like about it. You know, it starts off, it's real bare bones. You get the organ that comes in, you get claps. You know, everything is real simple, and things kind of progress nicely through the song.
I think I know what you mean. Like, sometimes songs build up to their like this like maximalism, and this like only does like what is required to keep it moving forward. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. They call me Tommy Bare Minimum, baby. I don't like to write shit. It's hard.
Let's segue into another track from that first session. This one is called Janine.
Another song with the right tempo. I couldn't imagine 1 beat per minute faster or 1 beat per minute slower. It just hangs right where you want it to hang.
This was the song that really, like, I was really taken by coming out of the first sessions. I really loved the way this recording turned out. And Alan and I actually played this in a band for a long time.
Let's clarify here, right? Because we recorded this in 2015, then we didn't release. It was done, but we didn't release it for 10 years. And in the interim, you and Alan in Mega covered this song, which was, I'll just say for me, a very cool moment was seeing your band play years later in Delaware and you covering this song. That was an all-time moment. So thank you for that.
I do think the recording, though, there was something about it that was really nice.
It's way more minimal. Like, I definitely added changes and stuff. I, like, Steely Dan it out.
No kidding.
It's more like Paul Simon, but yeah.
Well, and I think you did a nice arrangement of it, and it was always really fun to play, but I feel like something never quite compared to the way this hit the tape on the first go-around.
Yeah, this one has, like, a ghostliness to it.
But a funny story, though, I don't know if I've shared this before. I know I've shared this in person, but I don't know if I've shared it on the podcast before. Marty swears that I'm making this up, but I swear I'm not. We were playing this with Mega, Phil and I, and the other guys, probably 5 years later. Marty comes to visit us in Delaware from Portland, comes to see us. We play this. At the end of the show, you were like, yo, what's that cover song you guys did? And I was like, dude, you're on the drums for the original version of this song.
No, shut up. Come on.
But it must have only had a little bit of familiarity.
Marty's like, I didn't listen to the songs before, but I definitely listened to them after. Yeah, sure you did, Marty. He never heard it again after he left the studio.
But I think maybe you reimagined it or something. I don't know. I mean, I know this song well.
That sounds like a perfect Marty anecdote to me. Marty, I'm gonna give you a compliment. I love the militaristic snare drum choice in the chorus here. I think that was a really cool choice.
Oh, the da 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 da. Yeah. I'm going to be a little out of character and also give a compliment here. I think Tom's bass line on this, to me, that little lick, the boo doo doo doo, I really think that pretty much makes a song. And I always loved, I tried to find like, oh, how can I one up this or figure out a better way to do it? And I think you nailed it on that.
Thank you. I think that might be my favorite bass line I've ever written. So there we go.
I agree, Tom. It's a great bass line and it's a great example. By the way, I wrote the song. I'm very proud of the song. And it's a sign that it's a great bass line, Tom, because when I go back to play it on piano, just like calling it back to memory, I'm like, I have to play the bass line in my left hand.
Yes. That's great.
Well, so Rob, when you were writing this song, correct me if I'm wrong, but that whole Heroes, Martyrs, and Ghosts, you had like a separate song that was called like Heroes, Martyrs, and Ghosts that you, I think, like cannibalized to make the chorus for Janine, right?
I think I thought of that piece of the line first, and then I hummed a few different versions of how I might sing that line into my phone. So I think that's what you're referring to. I don't believe it ever got beyond that stage in terms of song development, but I knew I liked that construction, and I just found a way to work it in. So it wasn't the original melody line that I sang into my phone or maybe shared with you guys, but it was probably just that single line, and then I put it in this song. Which is the kind of stuff I do a lot. I assume you guys as songwriters do a lot too. I'll hum a few bars into my phone, I'll label it, I'll write down one single lyric, and some of this stuff is kind of floating around in your head, maybe for a long time. Same with guitar lines or guitar riffs too. You're like, oh, that riff, yeah, I'm looking for a place to use that, or, you know, and then eventually you come up with a song, and you're like, this is where that fits.
I definitely know what you're talking about.
I've heard people who thankfully commented on our record and listened to it say that I'm drawing from Ghostbusters 2, where they actually get together. But I assure you I'm not, because just watch the first movie. It's obvious. Well, first of all, Janine is coming on to Egon. But it's also obvious as an audience member that they belong together in this nerdy two sides of a coin world. And Egon is just kind of ignoring her.
I think you mean kind of autistic is what you actually mean. Yeah.
Exactly. So in my mind, this was the moment when he sets off to start walking up the stairs. He's thinking about what could have been, the chances he did not take. That was what was in my mind.
I'll be honest, if I was in working proximity to Annie Potts for, you know, any amount of time, I'd be thinking about her constantly. She was cute as hell in this movie.
And she didn't age for 35 years, so that also helped.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep this train a-rolling, but before we get back to our story and discuss a couple more songs, let's go back to our listener-submitted mean tweets. The outpouring of snark was very overwhelming and beautiful. guys, and we are going to kick our next listener tweet over to Adam.
Listener Logan.
Contest winner, Adam.
Thank you. Our contest winner, Logan, writes in and says, if this record was played for citizens of 1984 New York City, they would have begged for Gozer to end their suffering.
Boosh. Okay, I have one here from listener Stan, who simply writes, countdown to ectoplasm.
Again, complimentary. I'll take it.
That's really
thoughtful.
good. Nice.
Alan, next up.
We're going to continue that theme slightly here with listener Philly, who writes in with some more alternate titles for Stay Puft. Can't Buy a Chill, Metaphysical Graffiti, Out of Slime, Goose Next, We're Only in It for the Money, and Clicks. And my fave, The Band Dumbs Down for Broadway.
Ooh. And I feel like that one's specifically for Marty.
Yeah, it's a Genesis.
Yeah, that's
good.
it's pretty good.
Nice. Next up, Phil. I think you have one.
Yeah, I've listener Chris here. Yes, it's true. This album has no dick.
All right, let's kick it next to Marty.
We have listener Brian, who's appearing a second time. Good job, Brian. Brian says, you've got the tools, you've got the talent, you need to stop.
All right, and we're going to kick it back to Phil for one more.
All right, I've got a friend of the show and repeat guest Tony writes, giant slore, more like a giant snore.
Always clever, Tony. Always clever.
Always clever. You bastard. Okay, Tom, I think you have one more for us.
I do, and this is listener Ben, who writes, Stay Puft is an album that answers two burning questions. 1, what if there was a Ghostbusters Broadway musical? And 2, what would the songs rejected from that show for being too tuneless and forgettable sound like if you put them all together? Boosh.
And finally, I got one more here from listener Matt, who writes, this belongs on a list of 1001 albums you must die before you hear.
Yeah, because of the ghost thing, right? Not because it sucks.
All right, seriously, we love you all. We especially love you all who supported us by buying a copy of the record. So let's do our second raffle drawing here and see which of you lovely complainers is going to get to pick an album in the new year we cover next and get an invite to come on the show and complain alongside us. Drum roll, please. Listener BT.
All right.
You're in, baby.
Oh. BT, I believe, is a Broadway fan, right? Came to us through the Jesus Christ Superstar episode, or am I thinking of somebody different?
That could be. Yeah, that sounds right.
I gotta get some Prevagen or something, man. I can't remember anything.
I know. He's like, he just knows. He hears two initials. He's like, "Oh, BT. Oh yeah, I know BT. Yeah, he's a big Broadway fan."
Alan's like, I remember the tempo change, and immediately that was it. We were in the pocket.
I love that Phil is calling Alan out for making up shit from the past.
Right, with Phil and Marty on this call, I'm on safe ground here, I think.
Let's get back to our story. So we made 5 songs. We liked them. The last song was called Miller Time. It was cool, but it was a bit of a shouty bar song over acoustic guitar. We ultimately left it behind because it didn't fit super well with the rest of the tracks, sound-wise, right? We considered releasing it as an EP, but there was one thing that was bothering me. The time pressure to finish the tracks that weekend meant that one song got short shrift in the lead vocal department. That was the Tools, The Talent. Now, to my mind, Tom wrote an excellent song here. Great story, great references to the movie, and also builds its own storyline outside of that. I really love and still love the song, but Tom's lead vocal in one section wasn't quite good enough to sell it. He was under pressure, time pressure at the end of the weekend to hit the notes. And although we called it good at the time and we even mixed and mastered the song, it stuck in my craw. I don't know if it's stuck in anyone else's craw, but it's stuck in my craw.
It definitely stuck in yours more than mine. And, I've been trying to go back and diagnose what could have possibly been the cause of me not being able to hit that note, because I think it's a totally hittable note for me. And it's just like, I don't know, I spent all weekend drinking and smoking weed and cigarettes and eating like shit. How could I possibly have not been able to hit a note? Yeah.
Inexplicable.
Yeah, you took such good care of your larynx all weekend.
Also, don't forget it was like it was like 100 degrees and bone dry.
Oh, yeah.
Tim kept pulling up that tuner and yelling at us. That's a lot of pressure.
The reason I think it's worth bringing up, I mean, one, just to be real about the challenge of what it is. But Tom, there's so many reasons, right? The truth is you did hit the note in that moment. You just didn't quite hit it with as much confidence as I felt you could have done and that could truly sell the song. And there's just a lot of subtlety and intangibles when it comes to making a lead vocal. Like, again, you were under time pressure. It was one of the last things we did. And nerves, the relative relaxation of your throat is a huge factor in hitting notes, right? And so time pressure really cranks up that piece of it. And not to mention that years of practice, I'm sure, have helped you learn how to do notes better. So anyway, it was subtle, I'll admit, but I think I'm not going to play it for the audience. I'm going to spare Tom that embarrassment. But there is a significant difference. We made the song significantly better when we did go back. I fully believe that. So point is, you could do it better, and we did it better.
Phil's cracking up, and his camera. I love that, Phil. Your camera just is dynamic. It just keeps moving around the room.
It's kind of annoying how Paul's
It pointed to the floor because Phil fell off his chair.
Well, in general, though, I mean, Rob, I recall when we had the first 4 or 5 tracks, just feeling like it wasn't like a compelling release. Like what we had just felt like oddly disjointed. Like it was sort of like, oh, okay, it's Ghostbusters. I get it, I guess.
Totally. I agree. It wasn't quite enough. It wasn't weighty enough. It didn't have enough of a cohesive storyline, which we eventually filled out. But to keep things rolling, we also decided on a name back then, although we debated calling this the Dana Barrett Blues Explosion for a while, which is kind of funny.
I was going to say, I think it was more than debated.
It gets less funny, I think, over time, personally, and I like the punchiness of Stay Puft, so I think we landed on that pretty quickly. And that's more or less where it stayed for years. We all liked it. We discussed finishing it periodically, but the years ticked on over. I remember that a few years after this, maybe 2018, the chat group hit a place where I thought we might have another run at the album, and it was around this time that I wrote a new song called Men of Science. It didn't end up getting recorded till 2023 when the pandemic chilled out and we all met up again in the studio in Philadelphia to track the rest of the songs. But if you're listening to this, perhaps you're curious how songs go from these phone demo basic ideas into finished products. And if that is you, we got a treat for you here. I still have my initial guitar demo of Men of Science that I made with my iPhone and an acoustic guitar. So let's play that first.
So you gaze up to the sky while diamond dogs attack. The proton packs made by these hands of what can beat them back. We don't mind who you pray to when you're feeling lost. We don't mind. Some streams weren't meant to be crossed. When the lightning strike out, you're feeling for your life and you're looking for heroes of a kind. We are men of science. We are men of science.
And then for contrast, let's play that same section in the final version of Men of Science.
So we gaze up to the sky while diamond dogs attack. Proton packs made by these hands of what can beat them back. We don't mind who you pray to when you're feeling lost. We don't mind. Some streams were meant to be crossed. When the lightning strikes, got you feeling for your life and you're looking for heroes of a kind. We are men of science. We are men of science.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because to my ear, you hear the skeleton of the song in the demo. You hear chords and melody. You even hear that I put in that little sketch of a background harmony part, which I overdubbed to get across the idea. in the demo. But it's also worth noting that this is what you're walking into the studio with, is really just a skeleton.
Unless you're Marty and you haven't listened to it at all.
That's why you guys got a real drummer. I don't know if listeners can tell a difference in the drummers between this song and the previous ones he did, but it's like a man versus a boy.
No, Marty, you did your drumming was fantastic on this album. Don't sell yourself short. Your drumming in the first 4 songs is great. Yeah.
I disagree, Marty. You sound great.
Rob actually had him retrack all the old ones.
right.
This is what you're walking into. Coming into the 2023 session that we did in the summer, I think that Tom, Phil, and I briefly met at Tom's place in Delaware the night before to run through the songs, to talk about them on a basic level. But there's no real band practice, right? You're going in with these skeletal ideas, and you have to bang it out pretty quickly, because after setting up all the gear and running it through, and then everything you run through you have to listen to, so time moves really quickly in the studio, and of course you're paying for that time. So anyway, let's talk about the song Men of Science.
I was really liked this song. I remember that there was a lot of debate as to whether or not to start it off with those guitars right at the beginning, that kind of very in-your-face guitar line at the very beginning. I think I lost that argument, and in retrospect, I'm glad that I lost that argument, because I did not want to have it start with the guitar line, but I do think that it kicks off in a very sort of, not in your face way, but it lets you know that there's like such a tone change from the first song to the second song in terms of like what you're getting.
I'd say it's in your face. I think in your face is a good way to describe it. I mean, starting a song with like a guitar line,
That's
you
fair.
know?
Yeah.
Which is a cool guitar line. Who wrote that?
Rob did. I think it's a very cool guitar line, too. I think it's very cool. Unless that's like a Santana vibe or something.
That represents my one bit of lead guitar on the record, I believe, Phil.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Ooh, nice.
Phil plays the proper solo in the song, which is awesome, by the way. And Phil does, I believe, every other piece of what one might call lead guitar throughout. But yeah, to Tom's point, that was the very last thing. We were sitting at home with the tracks completed. I remember I even tried an organ line. I felt like something needed to happen in the opening of the song, the opening 3 seconds of the tune. And that was the very last thing that was added.
That's interesting that you say that, because it was added after the fact, because I remember recording it. It was just a count in, doom, and then everybody came in with the chords. And now thinking of myself in the room there versus what is here, I think that guitar line's kind of crucial to grab you. Otherwise, it's just kind of a strummy hit, you know? So it was a good call.
Without it, you kind of it focused your ear on the rhythm guitar, which was pretty spare, you know, which it's not bad, but it wasn't grabbing you, like you said, Adam.
Yeah, but this song has some really nicely like thought out chord changes in it. I've always just appreciated, Rob, I think that you will tend to not settle for just super stock chord changes. Like if you do a chord breakdown of the songs that I wrote versus the songs that Rob wrote and the songs that Phil wrote, honestly, mine are much more simple, and you guys tend to put a lot more like flavorful chords in there.
Let's clarify that if we're on a spectrum, Phil's on one end, you're on the other end, and I'm in the middle somewhere.
That's a fair point. Rob's the creamy middle on that one.
I don't do chord subs like Phil does chord subs, please.
I always thought this song had an interesting little like hints of a Shakedown Street vibe almost, or something to that effect.
Yeah, there's like a Grateful Dead thing I've never been able to put my finger on either. Yeah.
Like a 70s sort of vibe, yeah.
I think in my mind, I was trying to write either a Dr. Dog or maybe a Blitzen Trapper song. That was what I had in my head, this kind of slightly countrified 70s thing.
Well, I feel like you didn't share that with any of us, because I definitely was not thinking of that when I was like trying to write a bass line for this song. I was thinking more like kind of driving rock and roll bass line.
I think one of the things I like is not imposing my belief set too hard on the band. That's just a personal preference when we arrange songs. When you're in the room or in the recording studio attempting to guide how the final song comes out, you're saying yes and no to things, of course, as the songwriter. That's typically how we do things. You have that veto power. But just from my perspective, I like letting the players in the room make some of those decisions and follow their instincts. And so speaking of which, Marty mentioned it, but in the second session, Marty couldn't make it. We called another old friend, Steve Poltowski, to sub on drums, consummate pro, like a legitimate studio pro who just showed up for the day. never having heard any of these songs.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's remarkable to watch him work. Like, he sits down, he's just like so confident, like, let's go. It's like, all right, well, here it is. And he just goes for it.
Yeah, and like he had walked in and he was like, I listened to the demos that you put together. I have these specific questions. You answer the questions. And then he was like, okay.
I listened to the demos. Marty said ahead of Marty.
So, all right, I also want to mention, we can keep talking about details of this new session, but let's move it along. We also, for this new session, roped Adam into coming to one. Luckily, it was like 5 minutes from his house. Now, we did get Adam to come partly for his keyboard ability, right? Adam plays organ on Walter. You play piano on It's Looking Right at Me. I might be missing a couple keyboard credits there, Adam. You can fill them in if you like, but also for your beautiful voice, which I wanted to highlight that you can hear in the coda section of Only Zool. So let's play a clip of that right now.
Most days I feel just like ghost. There is no Dana, only Zool. There is no Dana, only Zool. Modern world has broken me and Dana. There is no Dana, only Zool.
That's a nice, beautiful mix of the Delaware boys, Adam and Tom, singing at the end of the song. And since we're talking about Steve, our studio drummer, who really is a pro.
We should have got him singing. He's a great singer too.
And he's got a big dick.
Yeah, probably.
God damn it,
You
man.
want me to text him right now? I'll let you guys know by the end of the episode.
What I was going to say was, for guys like us, we're what one might call, let's say, high-level amateurs. We've been playing our instruments for a long time. We're clearly very competent. We know what we're doing, and we're confident as well. But periodically, you run across someone who is making a living as a musician, and is in the next level up of skill level. And game recognized game. It's obvious from moment one, from hit one, that person is kind of on another level, and we're always in awe of that and very respectful of that. So specifically, because I think this is interesting to people, Steve came in on day 2 of this session, and in day 1 of this session, we recorded Only Zool, the piano part and probably the bass part,
Yep, definitely the bass part.
to a click. We had a drummerless day, and we were like, you know what? Let's just try this to a click. And I'm not even sure we knew for sure there was going to be drums on it.
This guitar was recorded too because the drums were definitely recorded last.
The drums were recorded last, which is very non-traditional, let's say. And then Steve came in the next day and just banged it out.
Well, we were sitting in the booth listening back to a bunch of stuff, and we played back Only Zool. And Steve was like, you want to put drums to this? And we're like, we don't even know. He's like, I'll just do it just in case. And just went down and just banged it out in just one shot. And it was like, oh, flawless. Good for you. We spent fucking 2 hours trying to get that. Yeah.
Hey, let me do a tambourine. It was like,
Really
okay.
cool. I also wanted to mention that you can hear Alan's lovely high voice on those high verse harmonies, the end of the verse, where I'm kind of going up and Alan goes up on top of me. Little known fact, I think Alan has the highest voice of all of us.
I agree with that.
I think we were trying to figure out what that note should be, and I think we had just done the Sly and the Family Stone episode, and so Everyday People was on my mind. And so it was a little bit of a swipe there, but I think it worked pretty well.
Alan's voice is usually like, Alan usually talks like this, hi, I'm Alan. But he puts on this like fake voice for the podcast, high pitch Alan,
We made him inhale Xenon before we taped the show.
It's my Stefan Urkel voice.
Phil also excellent lead guitar. Love the lead guitar that Phil did here. None of that was in any kind of demo. Phil created that more or less on the spot. It's a great counterpoint line and really helps bring the song together, especially such a simple song, which is only 2 chords. So I think it really, really came together in that sense. Normally that kind of stuff, those counterpoint melodies, are not in those initial skeletal demos, at least not in mine. Phil tends to make more robust demos. One exception to that would be, for me, the song The Traveler, where there's a great line. It's one of my favorite moments on the record, a little counterpoint line in the outro that's on slide guitar and piano That was something that I had in the demo.
Oh, yeah.
Both of which are played by Phil, by the way. Another thing I want to point out, Phil, is I remember back in 2015 that when you just stepped in and played keys on all the tunes, I was blown away. I had no idea that your confidence at that was startling to me, and I was very impressed.
That I was just ready to go on keyboards. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, keyboards is something I picked up very slowly from the age 16 to 30, right? Like I never worked on it hard, right? But one day it's definitely just like, I don't know, man. If it's one of these 8 to 12 basic chords, I'm pretty much ready to go. And 12 is kind of a lot, right? If you got if you've got 12 chords and a couple of voicings, you're ready to go.
That is a lot. Yeah, you got it, man. You have most rock albums. You're covered.
I also just want to give general props to Phil as being someone who, besides being just a very intricate pop music producer overall, this skill I'm talking about. When Phil makes a demo, he tends to put a lot more thought into the small details like this, where in contrast, I feel, speaking for me, I'll speak for myself, that I'm more about the skeletal shape of things as a starting point. So I wanted to use that as a segue to talk about the last song on our focus list, which is a Phil song. It is called Louis Tully, Central Park West. But before we play a clip, I wanted to use this opportunity to show how the song came together before we got to the studio. So what I have here is a demo Phil made back in 2015, before our original session. You'll hear the main verse chords, the melody, and the words, plus an early version of the instrumental section into a key change.
I heard your TV set blaring like a stereo on a Friday night, but you were not home. So I turned my setup loud. Oy vey, I wanna do you favors. That's why it broke my heart when I saw Venkman calling. I'd seen his TV ads, handsome and oh so charming. I know that we could be a thing if you would just get to know me. I'm not all stuffed shirt and tie. I don't have to be all up down corporate.
Now, we all thought that was a really cool starting point for a song, but it wasn't quite finished enough to bring to the initial recording sessions. So when we started to email and communicate about the 2023 sessions, we all combed through our various snippets left undone from the previous round and decided to try to finish the better ones and make the record. I'll admit I also watched the movie with a pad and paper and lightly storyboarded some of the major themes and inflection points and things like that. And brand new songs that came about approximately from that storyboarding were stuff like Keymaster, It's Looking Right At Me, Only Zool, and Ain't No God. Whereas stuff we had pieces of before but that needed finishing included Walter, the Tools Talent Reprise, and the aforementioned Louis Tully. And I offered to collab with Phil to finish Louis Tully as I felt like it needed a chorus. So I worked at home on that a little and I sent him back a second demo in which you can hear some initial ideas for the chorus and the hook of the tune added on to what Phil had already written. So let's play that.
That's why it broke my heart when I saw Venkman calling. I'd seen his TV ads, handsome and also charming. I know that we could be a thing if you'd get to know me. I'm not all stuff shut and tight, don't have to be uptown corporate. Do I have a ghost of a chance with you? I would make the most of a dance if you want me to. We could be lock and key in harmony evermore. Do I have a ghost of a chance at all? Do I have a ghost of a chance at all?
Cool. And finally, Phil put everything together, made some amendments to the melodies. We collabed some more on the final lyrics before recording it in Philadelphia in the summer of 2023. So here is what the final product sounds like.
That's why it broke my heart when I saw Venkman calling. I'd seen his TV ads, handsome and oh so charming. I know that we could be a thing if you would just get to know me. I'm not all stuffed shirt and tie. I don't have to be uptown corporate. Do I have a ghost of a chance with you? What I wouldn't do for a dance with you. We could be lock and key, never lasting harmony. Do I have a ghost of a chance with you, Dana? I heard you feel.
I'm glad that the key change was there always. I'm glad that, I get to the most important part first, the key change.
You write the key change before you write the melody.
Yeah, right around the key change,
Work your way backwards.
I like that this song has it's a different angle of soul. It's more like a Ronettes girl group vibe, whereas a lot of the other songs are maybe more straightforward, like what you would expect from like a male-led group of that era.
I love the pop production here. I give Phil full credit for that. He had lots of interesting bells and whistles and ideas here. And I'll just call your attention to the instrumental section starting around 1:43. That's Phil playing guitar, plus a toy piano, plus a bunch of other stuff, maybe multiple guitar tracks. Very, very, very cool.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun making that in a bedroom of my house.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, this is a cool tune. I do remember we haven't talked much about the producer on that day, which that's a whole can of worms in and of itself. But this guy was sort of a douchebag.
No, not sort of a douchebag. This guy's an amazing, immense
Certifiable.
Well, I wanted to keep the runtime on this fairly reasonable, so I didn't want to get too much into it. But I remember this was when I'd come in for that session. You guys had already done a full day. I jumped in, heard the demo a little bit, started tooling around a little bit, trying to get familiar with the song. After we do a few takes, the guy comes down, or he either comes down or he says through the
talkback mic into the headphones.
Basically, yeah. And he's like, that sounded good. He's like, but hey, bass guy, could you make sure you have a chord sheet in front of you next time?
So yeah, just so everybody is aware, there is a nice little inside joke on the liner notes of this, because the guy that we worked with at the studio was super fucking annoying, not cool at all. And he reminded us of Brant, the Big Lebowski's assistant from the movie The Big Lebowski. And so we specifically thanked Brant in the liner notes because we did not want to have to thank him directly, although he did help record half the album.
Guys, we have been to many studios in our day. We've worked with many engineers, guys who run these studios, run the equipment. By and large, 99% of them are so chill, so cool, know their shit, consummate professionals, help you get it done, help, like Tom said earlier, kind of nudge you, believe in you just that little bit to get you to do the take. I know you can do a better one. You got one better one in you, that kind of thing. Little sounding board. The fact that this guy was the opposite of that was really startling, to be honest. So we worked through it.
Yeah, there were times where he'd be like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I'm like, okay, but we are paying you like a couple $100 an hour for this, right? Like, yeah, but I don't really want to work on this anymore.
Just bizarre. But okay, but in the interest of keeping the runtime, we can move away from him. I wanted to mention another thing that is on this track, which is back in the first session, we tried something off the cuff.
Now we're back into Louis Tully.
We're back to Louis Tully, but I wanted to mention where this came from, which is the song The Traveler. It's a vocal effect. The song The Traveler is sort of recasting Gozer as a drunk lover returning home, banging on the door to be let in. And so after we nailed the lead vocal, in order to get what we call internally a monster voice effect, what we did was we sped up the tape and we had me, the lead vocalist, re-record my vocal at that higher speed. Now, the result of that, follow me here, is that I had to sing the song in a higher key. Because the track is sped up, it ups the key. But then once you slow the tape back down to the normal tempo, my vocal double that I just recorded sounds extra low and inhuman, right? And we mixed it into the background a bit, but I'm sure you can hear it if you listen to The Traveler. It's on the entire lead vocal track. So with a little production detail decision like that made, in some ways it makes it easier to make future decisions. And as producers, we're looking to tie ideas together, not just song concepts and characters, but subtle little production things like monster voice. So this is why in the second verse of Louis Tully, it's supposed to be Gozer speaking to Louis Tully, and we use that same technique again.
Gozer coming in, yeah.
I heard you feeling down, pining over cello players. But what you need right now is multi-dimensional flavor. You know the gates will open wide. You just gotta let it happen.
And I give you a lot of credit for this song, Phil. I do think that in a lot of ways, Louis Tully is the sort of heart of the movie. He's the guy that you know he's not going to win, but you want to cheer for him anyway.
Everybody likes Louis, yeah.
Everybody likes Louis, yeah, and he kind of gets screwed over, but he's all right in the end. But yeah, I really do dig the way that this song is not bitter, just pining lover.
Well, I'll tell you, it really was not hard to relate with this character.
So we finished the session in Philadelphia. We took all the master files home with us. We proceeded to fill in the gaps. For instance, the song Keymaster, which I originally conceived as an even weirder, fully a cappella ghost choir thing, had an interesting journey, wherein we started on the drumless day in the studio doing just my lead vocal. Maybe I plunked out the melody on a keyboard first to follow, something like that. Then we recorded Phil on organ doing the low drone note, which might be my favorite track of the whole session.
I feel like that got kept just because at some point.
No, it's badass. Then when I got home, I ended up deciding to just reharmonize the entire thing and add piano underneath, which was an interesting experience. I got my full, this is the most musical I've ever been, which is I was drawing out notes and syllables and not only determining what the harmonization chords underneath were, but also the harmony notes. Then I sang all three harmony parts. Then Tom came in the middle and sang the middle harmony part that I had laid out. So what you have is a vocal stack of me, then Tom on top, then me on top of that. Anyway, it's just interesting. But the only thing that made it that remains from the original session is Phil's drone note of a low D on that organ that goes through the entire song. And I just, another interesting thing people might think is interesting. I had the idea to end Keymaster on an unresolved chord, which is an A7, instead of resolving it to the D major, which would be how most songs would resolve, let's say. But I also knew, after we recorded it, that is, after I had that idea, that we had another song called Janine that starts on a D major chord. So now I see that those two can go back to back in the sequence. They lead right into each other with Phil's drone note again, a low D, providing the connector. I just mention this because it's a case where two songs that were not conceived together, they now get tied directly together as part of the production process.
And this is like, while we're getting deep into the second track list, this is where we start talking about song order and things sort of like needing to work, right? So it's probably around this time you would have realized as well, like, oh, like this is going to be parked right next to this, like that can impact my choice.
It's a good point. And as we went back through the snippets and decided what we were going to record, we were, you're right, thinking already of the sequence because we were trying to tell the story of the movie, at least loosely. So we needed a chronology there. So most of that was baked. There was a little bit of wiggle room in a few places, but most of that was kind of baked. Cool. I mean, last thing I'll just say is we had a fairly clear idea of what we wanted the art to be. We looked around on Fiverr, which is a freelance site for the right fit artist. Phil found the guy who ended up doing it. His name's Anderson Metz. And the concept we gave him was more or less Stay Puft Marshmallow Man at an angle, popping out from the side, looking friendly but a little insane, mostly devoid of color, with the intention of the vinyl record being this intense splash of bright green, Slimer green, Ecto Cooler green is how I sometimes think about it.
Yeah, Ecto Cooler, yep.
I think that turned out amazing. So before we finish up, I wanted to read some of the nice things you guys said in our mailbag segment shortly, but I want to first do our third and final raffle drawing to see who gets an invite on the show.
For 1 second, I thought you were going to say some of the nice things we said about each other on that email thread. And I was really...
So let's do drawing number 3. See who's going to come on the show. Drum roll, please. All right, and I have Stan here. Stan, coming on the show.
Nice.
We get to complain about your favorite album to you. Congratulations, Stan.
Congrats, Stan. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Woohoo! You know, you can also pick an album that you hate and want to talk shit on. It's just whatever album. It doesn't have to be your favorite album.
Oh, that is an option as well. Yep.
Yeah, open door, baby. Okay, before we close it out, and I get your final thoughts on the record before we close the episode out, I wanted to read something that one of our listeners sent over. It's nothing short of a sincere love letter about the record from listener Philly. And though I can't read all of it, I'm going to quote a few lovely passages to you here.
By the way, guys, I wrote this. No, I'm just kidding.
The laziest pseudonym.
A real listener wrote this. I actually want you to sit back and take some praise for a moment, guys. As an avid listener and complainer myself, I have become fond of you guys over time. So in the style of the weekly trawl through the good, bad, and ugly of album history, I feel I must issue a disclaimer. My own personal feelings for these musicians will not color this review. Now he's talking about Stay Puft. As per their own rules, songs are to be kept short and concise. Tick. Harmonies are to be front and center. Tick. A concept album should actually have a concept. Tick. And a concept album it is. Anybody close to my age range will know the film inside and out, and the creators of this album make clever and funny use of the story and the script. Where they succeed is in their choices. The cliche thing to do would be to embrace the time of the film's release with a synth pop explosion or Ray Parker Jr. references or ripoffs. The Chop instead create an album whose vibe eventually settles very much into late 50s, early 60s rock and doo-wop and establishes a unique, dramatic impact. Second, they make repeated references both narratively and metaphorically to crossing the streams, which underpins the concept. And lastly, the typical notion in writing songs for this album would have been to make the songs specifically about the main star characters, but the Chop instead created humorous and touching odes to the other characters, which with surprising yet welcome results. He wrote quite a bit, so I'll just highlight a couple things he said about individual songs. The song It's Looking Right At Me immediately transports you to a time and place in the movie. Phil's vocal, in particular, delivers the dramatic undertone of the scene. He excels at singing the underdog parts. The highlight here is the funny lyrical reference to merchandising royalties, which appeals to the cynic in me. I should also point out, any great concept album should have a callback or a reprise. Well, we do have that, Philly. Anybody who knows me knows that I love them, but in the end of this song, It's Looking Right At Me, there is something, a pre-prize. Is that a real word? I don't care. Which I didn't get in my first 3 listens, but which I finally recognized as the melody to Keymaster. I brought this up because I love that somebody listened enough to figure out that we pre-prized our own song.
Actually picked that up, right?
Yeah, a little teaser. Yeah.
Definitely an Easter egg. And talking about Only Zool, he says it's so catchy I haven't been able to stop humming, whistling, and singing it. There must be a deep reason why, but the complainers don't have to tell me.
I think it's that high harmony that comes.
Totally
really
agree.
ties the room together.
It must be that drum part that none of us recorded. All right, and the last thing he wants to say is The Traveler is my personal favorite song. It's the best lead vocal from Rob, most notably in the chorus where he really lets his lungs loose. The harmonies on the verses play the deep backing vocal trick perfectly. That was the monster voice. And that 50s piano played by Phil is wonderful.
Great, thanks.
Nice.
Lastly, we already know that I love a callback, so the Tools talent reprise is a fitting postscript. The professional progression is finally complete with We Did the Job. Well, yes, you bloody did.
That's awesome.
Oh, there we go.
Agreed. Yeah.
Does make
you guys
you feel
nailed it,
nice.
man.
You nailed it, buddy. We're all part of this. Thank you so much for writing that. That was really sweet. It makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So this has been a lot of fun. I love how the record turned out sounding. I, of course, love how it looks. Makes for an excellent conversation piece on your record player. Pick it up And yeah, do you guys have any final thoughts before we close it out? Anything that you didn't mention that you want to mention about Stay Puft?
I feel like it was maybe when we were thinking about doing the second recording session that Phil brought I've Got a Dick to the table and was like, well, now we just have to do that, right?
I think it was floating around during the early sessions more as a. I mean, it was obviously a joke, but
No, it was in the demo pile.
It really landed. It really landed, you know.
Because I was busting that out for jokes after that.
It was in the initial round of demos, exactly as it stands today. And I think we maybe initially thought we shouldn't record it because it was like a 15-second song.
Well, I think the piano was a little more staccato in the demo.
Listening to that with my wife, she's like, hearing this song makes me like the album so much less. And I'm like, I have the exact opposite opinion. This, I think, is like it's the center, it's the beating heart of the album.
Okay. It's been a long evening already here. So thank you everyone for listening. For everyone here at 1001 Album Complaints, I have been Rob.
I've been Tom.
I'm Alan.
I'm Adam.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Marty.
Baboosh.
Here's my tweet length review. Ray Stantz, played brilliantly by Dan Aykroyd, famously mixes up human senses in the opening of the movie when